Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Tom from Cerulean Bay. This is Tropical Escapes at Home, your place where you can dive into the tropics and figure out what's going to work for you at home as you create your own personal tropical escape. So before we kick off today's show, I do want to give a quick shout out to all of the self-employed people out there, people who have that entrepreneurial spirit and they are not giving up in spite of these tough economic times that we've had. Hopefully things are going to improve this year for us all. But after a couple conversations I've had with a few friends who are self-employed and they've just been struggling, I just want to tell them, don't give up. It's been hard for us too. It's definitely not easy going out on your own. Being self-employed is not for the faint of heart. That's for sure. But, just hang in there and just find that inspiration, get online, connect with some small business groups, network wherever you can for that support, because it's definitely not something that you can do on your own. So just hang in there. I just really wanted to throw that out there because I think it's been a tough week for a few people and a tough month. And, they're really looking forward to a great 2025. So having said that, we're going to pick up where we left off. In our last segment, we talked about the differences in coastal design versus tropical design, just if you're imagining a New England coastline somewhere in Cape Cod versus the coast of Southern California, or you're down in South Florida, right away that's going to give you a different sense of imagery and feelings. So if once you've identified what it is about one of those locations or, one of those types of coastline or tropical areas that you really like, today's show, we're going to get into the design elements of that. So obviously, we focus heavily on the tropics here, but a lot of people, once they've begun to imagine, geez, what could my place really look like? It's now breaking things down and getting into the different design elements from colors and textures and plant life and lighting. So as we like to do, we'd like to get people thinking, start envisioning, what does your perfect tropical escape look like? It's the usual set of questions. What colors do you see? What are you hearing? If you're in your favorite island somewhere, what's the overall vibe and the atmosphere? When you're in your room or your suite, wherever you're at, what kind of furniture do you see? What do the accent pieces look like? What's inside the room versus outside? What's hanging on the walls? What does your floor look like? You're going to notice that as you imagine these things, certain colors are going to stand out. Certain items or imagery when it comes to furniture is going to stand out. Some people are more on the minimalist side and they're very happy with a space that's more on the sparsely furnished type of vibe, or other people like a more full setting. I think you want to stay away from clutter, because when spaces do get cluttered with a lot of furniture and a lot of accent pieces, it does become very distracting for the mind, for most people. So, be careful. If you like more of a full look, you don't want to go overboard. But as you're imagining your perfect space, just get a sense of, the density of the space. How full is it or how empty is it? Which way does it make you feel more relaxed? Because that's the direction you want to go. So having said that, I think one of the most important places to start when it comes to thinking about design and decor is, what are you going to make it look like? What is your favorite part about that? So the problem where people run into is when they start to apply a theme to a specific space. And we don't recommend using themes because it can be very easy to get locked in on a specific type of image or color. Well, let's just say your favorite thing is seashells and you want to design a room around seashells. Well, it's very easy to end up with a lot of seashell oriented art pieces, tabletop artwork, just a lot of seashell imagery and a lot of the colors associated with it. That's not what you really want. Or like with palm trees, I happen to love palm trees, but you don't want to decorate a room that's just about palm trees, because it's going to be very green. It's going to be very leafy. you're not going to really incorporate anything else about the tropics in there. When the goal here is to create something that incorporates all of the elements. When you take a trip to Hawaii or Miami or Fiji, you're staying at a hotel, you're staying at a resort. What you want to do is incorporate all of the really cool elements about that. So if seashells or palm trees are your favorite thing, that's great. They're going to be the underlying focus of your whole look. And what that means is they'll be the foundation upon which you build your look, but they're not going to dominate it. They're not going to overpower it. So you can use it as a foundational piece to build around. And then you'll find that as you're approaching completion, after you've painted and you've bought some pieces and you've used either existing furnishings or you've purchased some new ones, you can still have that focal point of art that is a seashell or a palm tree or a really nice desktop piece or a piece that's on a dresser in a bedroom if that's the room you're doing. So it's very easy to have your favorite part be the focal point without it being the sole thing that you see when you go in the room. That's absolutely what you don't want to do. So the other thing that we would say about themes is if they can come across as being very dated, or you just don't want it to look silly at the end of the day. You just want a really cool, just a nice cohesive look where everything pulls together, everything ties together very, very nicely. So having said that, when you've kind of got your focal point nailed down, your underlying focal point, I should say, and you know what your favorite pieces are, now the thing to think about is how are you going to support that? How are you going to start building around that? There's a lot of textures and mediums out there. There's a lot of woods, there's metals, there's glass, there's just all kinds of pieces now that you can start pulling in varying degrees. And there's a lot of colors that are associated with those things, a lot of textures that are associated. So it's important again to keep in mind the whole minimalist versus full look, because you can have a smaller room that doesn't have a lot of pieces in it. But if you're bringing in a lot of very boldly colored, high textured items, it can start to look overcrowded very quickly. Whereas if you're doing a big room, like a big living room, or maybe the whole downstairs of a house or something, and you keep everything on the light end, everything is very light in textures and everything, you can have a lot of physical things in there and have it still look really empty. You want to use smooth surfaces versus textures and, just create a nice combination of all of that too as you're pulling things together. And, what I'd say about that is don't rush. This is not something that you should be rushing. Take some time to think about it. Make a mental list about it. Or if you've got pictures, you like to take lots of pictures about things, or you're online and you're saving images to your phone, look at all of those and start to pull them together. And you'll see it's like, oh, you know what? That's a little too much of this bamboo look, or that's just a little too much stone. Or you'll start to see what you prefer and what you don't prefer as that blend starts to come together. So keep that in mind as you start pulling textures and colors and all of these things together to create that space that's centered around your underlying focal point there, your seashell, your palm trees. It could be fish. It could be the ocean itself. Again, find that focal point and then we're going to build around that. So very, very important. I think the next point here that we'd really like to get into is color, because color is such a foundational part of any room. And in the tropical world, it's important to think about all of the different colors that exist, highlight the ones that you like, that you don't like. In saying that, consider the span of colors. Anybody who's been through the paint department or Home Depot, at Home Depot or Lowe's, you can easily see there's a ton of colors out there. I mean, and there's every shade of everything, and it almost can be a little overwhelming. Think about the colors though, just from the basics, and see which one is for you. I like to think of starting points for colors. And in the tropical world, blues are pretty much the starting point. It's a primary color because of the ocean. Water is the primary object, and it's going to have different shades in there. You're going to have your turquoise and your azures and ceruleans and all of these different colors. It's important to really familiarize yourself with all of the different shades. And online, it's just awesome what you can find regarding color. Just Google the color blue or shades of blue and all the different things that'll come up. Shades of green are another one to Google. There are so many cool greens out there. And I would call greens the next high level color after the primary one of blue, because green is palm trees. It's all the plant life. It's all the landscaping if you're at a hotel or a resort. And there's a lot of different greens out there too. So it's important to figure out which ones of those do you like. Super, super dark ones, from the hunter greens to the lighter ones, the jades, the limes. There's a lot of really cool greens out there. Green's a cool color. After that, I would start looking at the whites, the creams, the beiges. When you're at the beach, all you have to do is look at the sand, the crashing waves, and the clouds in the sky. Those are going to give you so many different colors, more than you would normally notice. So when you look at the sand, the colors of sand, it varies depending on where you are. The various whites and the crashing waves, the colors of the clouds, when you put it all together, you've got, a good 4 or 5, maybe 6 primary colors right there. And these are important because depending on your color preferences, these are going to be in your carpeting or your flooring. They could be on your walls if you want to keep things neutral. Many times they're on your ceiling. So if you've got all of these going together and you start thinking of furnishings, do you want your furnishings to be on the lighter side too? Or should you start looking maybe at darker woods? When you're looking at accent pieces, do you really want anything that's in a neutral color as well? Because now you're only adding more neutrals to already a very neutral environment. So just some things to consider there. If you can imagine just a blank room and it's just 4 walls with nothing in it, and the walls are in pure white, and then you've got a blue carpet. It is something to work with, but it's going to be a little bit on the boring side. If you're really trying to get that authentic tropical feel, imagine that same room with more of a sand color, more of like a light beige, very light tan on the walls with turquoise carpet. Now you've got something that's trending a little bit more towards a natural look outside. That's something that you really, really want to focus on too. When people say, yeah, I'm just going to paint the walls white, well, which white is that? There's bright hospital white. There's a lot of really cool off-white colors. You start getting into the sands and the neutrals. Spend some time with that. Think about it. Look at samples online. Go to the paint store and take a look. And then when you get into your next primary color, whether it's the carpeting or it's something involving blues and greens, just again, imagine, what would I really see if I was in nature? There's the closest coastline to my house, or if it's a lake shore, or, it really does vary depending on where you are, and identifying the colors and the shades that you really like are going to play a big part in that. So, but keep it natural, keep things natural. You don't want to have things look like they're just too primary. It's blue, it's yellow, it's red, it's green. There's a million shades in there to work with. So once you've determined what should be on those walls, we've got the big colors, the walls, the flooring. Just a quick note about flooring. If you've got beautiful wood floors or you've got tile floors, just use rugs. Don't cover them up. A lot of people, I've seen some incredibly beautiful hardwood floors that people just carpet over, and I'm not quite sure why people do that. But, if you've got awesome flooring already in there that's in wood or it's in tile or stone, just, focus on using some really cool rugs. But once you get those large spaces nailed down, then think about your accents. And this is where you're really going to get into preferences of stronger colors versus more pale ones. The stronger colors being bright yellows and oranges, bold reds, and even purples. There's the dark blues and lush greens, or you start to get into the lighter tones. There's all kinds of light pinks and shades of orange. To help with inspiration, just think of tropical flowers. I've never really been a big flower person, but the colors that some of those are in are just really amazing. And when you get that out of a paint can, it actually looks pretty cool. So just imagine tropical flowers. If you're into diving or snorkeling, think of the corals that you'll see, brightly colored animals, the birds. Just spend some time really thinking about that to decide which colors you really, really like. And then drill down just a little bit further, because depending on how much you want to have in that room, I think if you check out one of our blog posts, I'll put a link to it in the episode notes, where we have some really good examples of the balance of color. If you really, really like bold colors, here's what can happen if you use too much. We've got some imagery there with it'll wake you up when you look at it. It's color on steroids. And then, if you've got just too much of the pale neutral thing going on, how it can look kind of washed out or lifeless. You want to have a good balance, a couple bold colors mixed in with a couple lighter tones. Very, very important to think about, because at the end of the day, when you come to your tropical space to relax, the whole thing needs to speak to you. And it's not just sitting there in a chair or lying down on a bed with your eyes closed. Your eyes are closed. You can't see anything. You want to enjoy what it is you've pulled together. And when I say that, that means everything. It is every detail. It's from the colors to your furniture selections, to your wall art, to your accent pieces, to the type of lighting you chose. The whole thing pulls together. And if there's any part of that that's out of balance, you're going to notice it and it's going to bother you. So, at the risk of repeating myself, it's just very, very important to consider these things carefully, and get online and look and check out what we have on our website. We really try to provide as much inspiration there as possible. But there's a lot of other great websites and just places that you can find awesome inspiration. The cool thing with paint, that I should say, is at least with paint, if you don't like it, you can paint over it. Paint is paint. If you end up painting and you're like, oh my God, this just isn't going to work, you can always paint over it. That's the beauty of paint. So I'm going to give you a couple tips about this, though, that I actually learned from my mom, because my mom, I think I've mentioned this before, but she used to like to paint. And I learned a lot from her. She would paint rooms at home growing up. She would do the bedrooms and the living room and all of that. And it looked really, really nice. And I'd go with her, to help get the paint. And she would give me some good tips. And this was back before the days of Home Depot. But even in some of those little hardware stores or paint shops, they had very, very bright lighting. And nowadays with Home Depot or Lowe's, next time you go, or even places like Costco or Sam's, just look up at the lights, those big, huge industrial fluorescent, whatever the hell they are, lights that they have. Nobody has lighting like that in their homes. And when you're at Home Depot or Lowe's in the paint department, that's what's shining down in the paint department. So they'll have, the different manufacturers with their little display, and they'll have some, maybe some overhead lights or something that's supposed to try to mimic the warmer incandescent type of light you would have at home, but it doesn't work, So just remember, whatever you're looking at the paint store is not going to look that way when you get it home. Also, a good tip that she gave me is that paint gets darker as it dries. And I've actually tested that many times over the years, and it's true. On top of that, no two walls in your house are going to reflect the same light. So again, when you're looking at that paint chip at the store and you settle on one particular color, that color is going to look 3 or 4 different ways in the same bedroom. So a bedroom is actually a good example, because most of those are either in a square or rectangular shape for the most part. But, you might have windows on 2 walls or maybe even only one. Well, depending on the direction of the sun, depending which way those windows are facing. If it's a north facing window, it's going to be darker. If it's south facing, it's going to be brighter. But when you paint in a single color and then it's going to darken a bit as it dries, you're going to notice, just go in a room, go in any room of your house that's painted and just look, and you're going to see shadows from furnishings or from other walls, or you're just going to see, you can see 4 or 5 different shades of the exact same color in the same room. And I recommend that people go in there in an existing room and see which is your favorite shade. Is it one of the darker ones? Is it one of the lighter ones? Because that can help you ultimately determine the paint chip to use. So I see some people, they'll buy several little tester cans of paints. I think it's Home Depot that has, they'll sell you, I think they're maybe what, $3 or $4. I'm not sure, but you can buy little tester cans and then you can come home and test all these little swatches on your walls and everything, which is fine. But, if you're trying to be money conscious and, you don't want to end up spending $20 on paints just to test them out at your house, what I suggest doing, and again, I learned this from my mom, is you look at the paint chip and really just kind of study it there at the store and decide which one you like, and then go the shade up that's lighter. If you're already at the lightest shade, usually at the top of the paint chip, you're usually going to be okay. The further down you go, shades tend to get darker. Stay away from the ones at the bottom, because the ones that appear dark at Home Depot are going to be incredibly dark when you get them on the wall at your house. So just make a mental note of that, to just go one shade up. My mom always said, trust me, you're going to be so glad that you did. And again, I've tried it and it's true. It's true. You might think that it's going to be off, but you could be saving yourself a lot of time and some money. A gallon of paint definitely isn't cheap anymore. And if you get good paint, especially the ones that have the primer blend in it, those are the really good ones to use if you're painting over an existing strong color, or maybe walls that just have staining or, just things on there that you really want to cover up, which typically would take 2 or 3 coats. You just get a good one that's already got the primer in it. That's going to save you a lot of time. Another thing to consider is wallpaper. So wallpaper has come a long way. It's not the nasty, sticky, gluey stuff that you had to use back in the 1960s and 70s. There are some really cool peel and stick wallpapers. You got to make sure that your wall is as smooth as possible and as clean as possible, so you don't end up with any problems with the paper not sticking correctly. But there's some really, really cool peel and stick papers out there. And you can go as bold as you want with big, huge, bold leaf tropicals, or you can go super muted where you can barely see what's printed on the paper. There's all kinds of stuff. Amazon actually has a lot of great selections on there. But these are other great ways where you can bring in that tropical imagery, just that real tropical feel in varying levels and in combination with paints and other types of wall art, or just anything else that would go on the walls. You can also create really nice accent walls with it too. But yeah, give wallpaper a check, and just, it is an option. A lot of people think it creates a very dated look. Not anymore. There's a lot of really cool products out there. So as we move through the different design elements, let's look at plants. Nothing says tropical more than lush plants and landscaping. And this is where you get into the big palm leaves and the philodendrons and banana plants. There's giant bird of paradise. There's all kinds of really, really cool plants. And they are both for those who have a green thumb, and for those who don't. So live plants are awesome for those who don't mind taking care of them. An important point about live plants, though, is some people have allergies, and sometimes it's the indoor plants that are causing the problem. I found this out with me. So years ago, I had the hay fever and the traditional seasonal allergy thing, but there were times in the house where I just didn't really know what was going on, and found out, if you have potted plants in your room, this is just a tip for the day here. If you have potted plants in your bedroom, be careful, because in the dirt, there are mold spores, and it sounds gross and nasty, but there are mold spores in there, and it does release into the air, and it can create the stuffy noses and things like that at night. So just pay close attention to live plants and make sure that they don't bother you. But live plants are awesome. Otherwise, they're just big and beautiful and they're natural. And you find the ones that have their happy place near the window and they're doing great. But for those of you, you're not a plant person and you still want to get that great tropical feel, the fake plants that are out there, or faux plants as they are now called. I don't think anybody uses the word fake. Well, I still do. Fake plants, because that's what they are. There are some excellent ones out there, though. Very, very lifelike, very well made. It's worth it to spend some money. They're not cheap. If you want to get good fake plants, you're going to be spending some money, but it is money that is well spent because nothing screams fake in a house like plastic. And when it is obvious that your plants are fake, it's really obvious. And it's just like you might as well not have them at all. But go ahead and shop around for really good fake plants if you don't want to do the real thing. They're obviously low maintenance. The only thing you really need to do, just like live plants, is you got to clean them. Fake ones are going to get dusty, and you want to keep those fresh looking too. But yeah, check them out. Or you can have a mix of both. The cool thing about fake plants is you can put them in darker corners, where lighting is an issue, or maybe where you've tried plants before and they just don't do well. Give fake plants a shot, and they come in all shapes and sizes. So that's your tip for the day about fake plants. Give them a chance. One thing I wanted to point out too, and as we talk about plants, are orchids. I have always thought that these are very, very nice looking plants, but that they were as fussy as hell to deal with. And I've learned, well, my wife actually showed me that they are not as difficult as people think they are. It depends on the lighting, but if you buy orchids, a lot of times they're in that barky mulch stuff. And what she found out was that you can pull them out of that, put them in a glass dish or a pot that just has distilled water, nothing else in it, just distilled water. And your orchids will be just fine. They do need a lot of light. They do need a good south or west facing window if you want them to flower. And I know this because we have an east facing set of windows in our house, and the orchid plants do very, very well there, but they don't flower. And the ones on the west side of the house, they get some light, but because of my neighbor's trees, they kind of block a lot of the light there, so they don't flower. So my wife getting frustrated with her plants because the plants themselves were doing beautifully, nice and green and full. She gives them to my sister-in-law, and my sister-in-law parks them up in a window, and they're blooming all the time like crazy because there's nothing obstructing the light. She's got a good, I think it's a southern facing window there. So we go over to their house to visit the orchid flowers, but she just puts them in the distilled water. Very, very easy. No fuss. If they're blooming, leave them where they are because a happy plant is a very nice looking plant. Other design elements. Let's get into something popular here as I'm looking at my notes. Wicker. Wicker is another big thing in the world of tropical design. And that, I mean, we could do a whole show on wicker alone just because of the different things that are out there. But in a nutshell, wicker is not the dated 1970s look that a lot of people think it is. I did some research on it actually and found out that wicker dates back to the ancient Egyptian times. And it wasn't until the 1970s that this look really took off in the US and became so popular. And we really recommend using it because, again, if you get online or you check out our blog posts, you're going to see some really cool imagery. It is important to note that wicker is not a plant. Wicker is a method of weaving, and what's being woven is what matters. That's where you get into the rattan, the bamboo. You can get into synthetics, which are really great for outdoor wicker furniture. Many people assume that rattan is one material used to make furniture and that wicker is another. That is not the case. Rattan is its own material. It's very, very popular. It's actually interesting to read about it. If you look up what the rattan plant is like, it's this vicious, brutal, spiny looking thing. It's a very active climbing palm vine that comes from Southeast Asia, and it grows very rapidly in the jungle. It's absolutely huge. It is as strong or even stronger than bamboo. It's considered one of the strongest woods in the world, even though it's not technically a wood because it doesn't come from a tree. Good quality rattan is very, very nice, but it's not cheap. It's important to know that if you're going to use natural rattan, you need to keep it inside. Outdoors, it fades really quickly when it's exposed to sunlight. It absorbs moisture. So just keep that in mind. If you are looking to use wicker furniture outside, just go with synthetic. It's made from resin or plastic resin or something like this. You've probably seen it. If you don't already own some, you've probably seen it at friends or family's house. It's very, very common in outdoor patios, outdoor living rooms. But you need to keep it clean. You need to hose it off. But outdoor wicker furniture is really, really nice. Good quality, though, is not cheap. So again, you're going to be spending some money if you don't want it to start fraying or coming undone. And there's a lot of cool pieces out there now. We've seen, wicker coffee tables with little built-in fireplaces in them. You get a little propane tank that you stick under there, and you've got a little fire feature that you can hang out with. Very, very cool. I just sit out there with a glass of wine and on that wicker furniture, and I love it. Very, very cool. So when you get into any kind of furnishings, though, obviously you want to be comfortable. So now you're looking at upholstery, pillows, cushions. Where are these things going to be? They're going to be indoors, they're going to be outdoors. Indoors, you really want to keep that tropical look going by looking at textures. You want to keep things lighter. You're looking at linens, cottons, and cotton blends. You can get into canvas. There are some polyester blends, but you want to be really careful because it starts to give a look. It's kind of hard to describe, but it starts to give a look that's going to take you away from tropical. It can tend to start getting heavy or bulky if you're using polyesters. If you're going to be getting into the outdoors, obviously those need to be sturdy. They need to stand up to the elements. They need to be washable. There's a brand out there called Sunbrella. I know that they make outdoor upholstery and different upholstery items. And it's actually a really, really good brand because it can stand up to the sun. But you'll see it's just that really heavy outdoor fabric, which is easy to clean. So consider where you are putting things like pillows and just any kind of upholstery, because indoors is not for outdoors. And if you use the outdoor stuff indoors, it's just going to look strange. But keep that in mind. So speaking of furniture, when you get into sofas and love seats, we've got another really good tip for you. And this comes from my Ethan Allen days. And boy, we're reaching back when I say Ethan Allen, because yes, I used to sell furniture at Ethan Allen back in the day. And I really learned a lot about what good quality furniture is. A lot of people used to make fun of Ethan Allen because it was the furniture that grandma had. And it was just this very pilgrim style furniture from the 1940s. But there's a reason why somebody was bringing that pilgrim style chair or sofa in for reupholstery, because the frame was sturdier than hell. I mean, nothing could destroy it. It was these are pieces that have been in families for generations, and they were passed down, and kids and then grandkids were wanting to get these reupholstered, and the frames were in perfect condition, considering a lot of newer furniture, which lasts maybe on average 5 or 10 years, and you're having to throw it out to the curb. So where I'm going with this is take a look at what you've got. If you've got existing furniture that's in great shape, frame wise, it's sturdy, who says you've got to spend money on new furniture when you can look into reupholstery? Reupholstery is not cheap, but if the piece really means a lot to you, that, sentiment does have worth, and we're big believers in sentimental value. But maybe you'll get lucky and it's cheaper than buying something new. Especially if it's an older piece, it's probably going to be better built than what's out there today. But, if reupholstery is not an option, the magic word of the day is slip covers. And let me tell you, there are some good quality slip covers out there today. Edna and I have some here at the house. Our boys are raised and we still have the furnishings that we had from back in 2007, still sturdy. They don't creak. we just throw a slipcover on it. We're the type, it's like, why go buy new furniture if we don't need to? So to create that tropical escape at home, look at slipcovers. There's some really, really good ones out there, especially where they have kind of that elastic built into the bottom part where it's very form fitting. You stretch it over everything. They're machine washable. They don't really wrinkle too badly. She's got some good ones. I think she got them at Aldi. I'll have to check with her. But I mean, Aldi, who knew? And there's sometimes, stores like Aldi, things come and go. So if you see it, you got to buy it because you don't know if they're going to have it again. But yeah, check those out. Slipcovers, tip for the day. Um, just a quick note about fabrics too is if you are going to be doing any reupholstery or you do work yourself, you know how to reupholster or you make your own pillows, keep things light. You don't want to get into the really heavy fabrics. There's a lot of uh, jacquard fabrics out there. Jacquard is a method of weaving, and we're not going to get into the upholsteries, the heavy duty. I'm not an upholstery expert, but back from my Ethan Allen days, I did learn what a damask is or a damask. I don't even remember how to say it, but I know what it looks like. Brocades. These are very heavy, very formal things that you would probably find at Buckingham Palace if you went and looked at what upholstery is there. Not tropical. You want to keep things lightweight. You want to keep things easy to clean too, because the tropical style also means tropical entertaining. It's a very social way of living. If somebody spills a drink, you want to be able to keep it easy to clean. So, you don't want to be with these heavy textured velvety fabrics, stay away from all of that. It's just going to be more trouble than it's worth. And it's going to draw you away from that real tropical feel. Regarding upholstery patterns, again, just a quick note on that. Be careful. I strongly recommend going light in upholstery patterns and then bringing in heavier or more bolder, loud patterns through pillows, through different accent pieces. Because if you have a very bold, busy couch or love seats, that's busy for the eyes. They're going to become a natural focal point for the room. That's where your eyes are going to be drawn to that. And, that's where you have like a really cool sofa and a love seat. And then you have a chair that just pops with all this wild pattern or color. Something like that is very great, very easy to work with. But when you've got large upholstery pieces that are like that, it's very hard to tone down. Everything else largely goes unnoticed in the room. And that's not what you want. Again, you want that cohesive, balanced look. So just some real important points there about upholsteries and patterns and, just having things not come out too strong. I have to throw curtains in here too. In the tropical way of decor, curtains should be light and airy, plain and simple. You can get away with linen and gauze and things like that, solid colors or very lightweight prints. If you're going to go bold in a pattern for curtains, keep your walls very simple and let your curtains do the talking. Just keep the walls very, not necessarily muted, but you don't want to go with too bold of a color there or have walls that are full of artwork, lots of wall art. You want to go muted with that because if you do go bolder on the walls that have a lot of wall art, keep your curtains more on the muted side. Again, too much of one thing is never a good thing. And you also want to make sure that if you're going to be using curtains, other than if it's a bedroom and you need blackout curtains for sleeping, you want curtains to allow light. So being in the tropics means being outside. It's the sunny beaches, it's hanging out by the pool or on the patio. There's lots of windows. You want as much natural light as you can. And that's an important thing. So be careful in your curtain choices too. Moving on, design elements. Let's see, lighting. Lighting is a huge one. And in the world of energy efficient bulbs that we have today, it's almost disastrous. Well, I should say it was almost disastrous. Manufacturers are at least coming out with warm lighting again because I am not a cool white lighting person at home fan. I'm not a fan of that. Some people are into it. I don't know. When you're looking at really authentic tropical design or you're in the islands, you have a lot of natural light. Natural light is not cold and white. It's not fluorescent. Those white bulbs, it's very office like. They tend to wash things out. And this is the opposite of what you want when you're going for tropical design. You want things to be on the warmer side. We have really, really good imagery in the blog post. Again, I'm going to put, as I mentioned, I'll have the link to this particular post in our episode notes. But there's excellent examples in there of what warm white looks like versus cool white. So be careful with your lighting choices. Look at your light bulbs and just decide where you want to go with that. If you have certain fixtures, certain lamps where you use the Edison bulbs or those antique looking bulbs, those are amazing. We absolutely love those. Highly recommend you incorporate some of that, just because not only do the bulbs themselves look really cool, they just give off such a warm glow. Again, you don't want too much of it. You don't want all of your lighting to come from these, because you'll end up with a darker yellow hue in your room, which is, again, not natural. It's going too much in the opposite direction. But yeah, just look at Edison bulbs, check them out. They come in different shapes and sizes. Very, very cool. Other design elements to include are your floors. There's a lot of different options you can go with flooring. This is a taste and preference type of thing. When it comes to tropical design, there's a lot of ways you can go. You can get into tiles. Tile is a great choice along with stone. They stand up very well to salt and, salt water, sand. If people are going to be tracking sand into your house, those kinds of tiles, the Saltillo tiles, slate stones, things like that, very, very good for actual coastal living. I've heard of people having problems with ceramics. They get scratched. Ceramics are sleek. They're cool. They're very, very nice. But if you do live in a place where people can track sand in the house, just be careful, because just depending on how granular it is, it can damage your tile. But there's also wood flooring. I love bamboo wood. Bamboo flooring is absolutely cool. It comes in different shades. It's very, very durable. A lot of people are hesitant to use natural wood floors in their house because of scratching, especially if you have pets. So I've never had pets with bamboo flooring, but from people that I know, it works very well. And as I mentioned, it's available in shades from lighter to darker. There's different hardwoods that you can look into. Just be careful with them, though. As with wood laminates, laminates are a lot cheaper. Laminates have come a long way. There's a lot of great product out there for wood flooring using laminates. But as with real wood, check the scratch resistance, especially if you have pets, because when your floors start to get scratched, it's very hard to fix depending on where it is. You can start covering things up with rugs, and we love rugs, but rugs, when you start putting rugs where they don't belong, it's very noticeable and it doesn't look natural. So yeah, just take care with the woods and make sure that you're putting in the right kind of flooring with durability that's going to stand up to the lifestyle that you have. Speaking of rugs, they're really cool too. Rugs are great for people, whether they're on tile or wood. They're great for people who can't have carpet. If you've got bad dust allergies or just health issues where carpets are not a good idea, rugs are great ways to soften the room. They warm things up depending where you live, because even wood floors after tile can be very, very cold. So rugs come in a million different styles and colors and shapes, and they're made from many different materials. For the tropical lifestyle, we recommend some really great bold colors. There's like polyester blends, which are out there, which are easier to clean. But you can get into the mats too. When you get into woven mats, you're getting into the jute and sisal, different sea grasses. There's a lot of cool mats out there in the South Pacific. Oh my God, they produce some beautiful things. We've got a few pieces available. We're looking into sourcing some more, but we can definitely refer you if you're looking and you're just not able to find authentic woven rugs that are from places like the South Pacific. Send us a note, inquiries@ceruleanbay.com, and we can help point you in the right direction to where you can get some if we don't have any in our store. But yeah, take a look at rugs. They're great ways to break up just expansive flooring and to warm things up. They also bring in a lot of much needed texture. As we mentioned earlier, texture is a big part of the tropical way of life, and you're going to see that in accents. Baskets. There's the woven baskets. Um, you've got other textural elements, seashells, corals, wood carvings, glass work, metal work. There's just so much out there that you can use to bring in really good textural elements if you've got smoother furnishings, smooth floors, or just not a lot of wall art. Again, this is where you can really go heavy on the textures and do some great things with that. That's really where you're getting into accents, and we're going to have a different show for accents because it really is its own topic. I mean, accents are something we could talk about for days because there's just so many different ones out there. But I think for the textural elements, we've really covered quite a bit. And hopefully, we've given you lots to think about and things just to consider, lots of stuff to just Google and research. Get on our website and see what we've got. Some of the things we've talked about, we touch on in our blog posts. But again, we hope that we've been helpful in having you mentally create your own personal space. This is what really determines that is what you envision. Obviously, what's realistic and what's in your budget. Look at what you already own that can be repurposed. There's a lot of existing pieces that are out there in people's homes which would work very well in tropical design. They just don't realize it. It's kind of like an out of sight, out of mind thing, or pieces that you might have in certain rooms which are so used to being there that you don't really notice them. But this is where you just need to take a good hard look around your house and see, what do you already have that can work? Save some money, save some time. And then the room that you identify as the one where you're going to be your retreat, empty it out. When you get a chance, just empty it out and start taking existing pieces, if you have any, and seeing what works where, and then start imagining, okay, newer pieces. What could I put where? And as we've mentioned before, and you're going to hear us say 100 times, look at thrift stores, look at consignment shops, look at estate sales, go to estatesales.net, see what's in your local area. You can pick up beautiful pieces for a fraction of the cost. There's no need to go out and spend a ton of money to create your own tropical escape. So hopefully these tips help you for today. We are already looking forward to our next show. Thank you so much for joining us. It really means a lot that you're taking time out of your busy day to visit with us. So until then, keep imagining, keep mentally creating, just breathe, relax, and imagine. And we wish you all an awesome day. We will see you next time. Take care, all.